international city.
Okay.
So we support and assist entrepreneurs to take their business endeavors to that next level.
Okay.
The only thing about Atlanta, the entrepreneur population is very significant. In fact, the entrepreneur experience is a big part of the ATL experience. So the demand for what we offer is huge because of the city of Atlanta.
And there really are a lot of people who try to be business owners here in our city, which is really cool. So why is it important for them to get involved?
Well, entrepreneurs, business owners, they need a trusted, reliable source for information, access to resources, exposure for their business, exposure for their brand. And so to be connected to the Atlanta Black Chambers is to be in the know. You don't want to miss on a wonderful program or some resources that have been made available. So when you are connected to the chamber, you find out consistently all the information that you need to know, and this is very important.
Awesome. And that's exactly what we're doing here this morning. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. This is Ricardo Berries with the Global Opportunities Committee. I have the honor of hosting the Power Hour every Wednesday, where we talk about the hour that shall pass and the power that actually continues. So if this is your first time joining in, please feel free to use the chat to your disposal, introduce yourself. Let's talk about where you're actually coming in from. Would love to know. Shout out to all of our folks from all around the world. I see folks here from Mauritius. I see folks here from Uganda, from South Africa. This is just truly amazing when we can kind of use technology to bring us together like this. The Global Opportunities Committee is a committee of the Atlanta Black Chamber, and we are really bullish on global opportunities around the world for our members, whether you are doing trading commodities or professional services, or whether you're doing investment, you're an investor or you are an investee, or you are looking for a partnership, or you've got the capacity to facilitate a partnership. The Global Opportunities Committee is after this global community that we're putting together to really help you to facilitate these. So let us know who you are. Put your information into the chat as we get started here. A couple of housekeeping. Please keep your microphone on mute. And we don't want to boot you out. So make sure that your phones, your microphones on Zoom are muted as we go through with this discussion. The other thing is that if you've got any questions as you're hearing the conversation, please put them in the chat. We will facilitate those questions coming through. And then finally, what we normally like to do on the Power Hour is to feature a spotlight. We want to spotlight our members. So if you're a GOC member or an ABC member and you would like to be spotlighted, message me. Just private message me, and I'll make sure I bring you up on stage. You've got 60 seconds to introduce yourself, introduce your business. And then if you've got an opportunity, which is going to be my second spotlight, whether that's an opportunity to do business with someone, you're looking for a partner, you have a need, you're looking for an investor, you're looking to trade a product, we'd like you to open those mouths that you've got so that you can get fed. I say closed mouth, do not get fed. This is your opportunity to actually do that. Private message me if you'd like to come on stage to talk about that. So we're spotlighting an opportunity, and we're spotlighting a GOC member. Okay, so let's get right into it. This is a really interesting conversation that I'm looking forward to. And this morning we actually have Shaq. We call her Shaq. You may know her as Shaq. Her real name is Shaquana Teasley, but I don't do justice in introducing folks, so I'm gonna hand it over to her and ask her to actually introduce herself before we get into the subject matter here. So Shaq, welcome. Thank you for joining. I might just add that you're a GOC, you're an ABC member, you're a GOC member, and you actually lead the trade and compliance side of things for us. So welcome and thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Shaquana Teasley. My colleagues know me as Shaq. I am the CEO and founder of Agate Solutions. We are an accredited education institute and consulting agency specializing in international trade and customs and supply chain strategies. I have been in this industry for over 20 years, believe it or not. I started my career in international trade in 2004, working through supply chain and global logistics, trade compliance, and customs. It's an honor to be here, and it's also an honor to lead the international trade and compliance sector for GOC as well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And backstage we were talking a little bit about how many years of experience you have, and I'm just thrilled to know that like you are almost twice an expert, because they always say it's about 10 years or 10,000 hours it takes to become an expert, but you've got 20 plus years. Like how did that even come about? What made you even want to get into this whole thing about trade? Because it also kind of feels boring to a lot of people, and people don't even understand it. And so, but you decided to take it up, which is very interesting. I want to hear a little bit about that. Like, what is it that got you into this business of trade and compliance? And I mean, 20 years, wow, congratulations. That's a lot
Thank
of
you.
time. That's like an adult, right? So, driving your own car and having probably your first apartment. And so that's a long, long time, and people don't realize how much work is involved in building a 20-year career. So talk to me a little bit about what drove that.
So, believe it or not, I had never heard of international trade, had no knowledge of it whatsoever. I actually went and got my undergraduate degree in social work, and I wanted to work in the human service sector. But I relocated from New York to Atlanta, and all the hardness of and challenges of being a social worker in New York was even worse in Georgia, plus less pay. So I was like, I need a whole new career. What am I going to do? I took a consulting, or what we call temp job, through a temporary agency at Yellow Freight. And they taught me exports to the Caribbean because they're also a freight forwarder. People think they're only a trucking company. And they taught me export compliance and documentation. So don't ever discard the importance of documentation. It's a whole career within itself. And then I was a temp there. I was there for about 2 years, and then I was recruited to a large chemical company. So I'm also a chemical expert in regard to the movement of chemicals. And I actually was a consultant for NASA for years. Believe it or not, every time something is exported out of our atmosphere, it's still an export, and it has to go to customs. So that includes satellites, rockets, and all the things that actually leave the planet Earth. And I worked in chemicals, and then I moved on to work for sporting goods and apparel. I worked for Home Depot Corporation. Before I started my own organization, I worked for Sikorsky Aircraft, which is the manufacturer of the Black Hawk helicopter and the presidential helicopter. So I was leading international trade for Sikorsky Aircraft and Lockheed Martin, which is the largest defense contractor in the world. And once I recovered over $30 million in duty, and I was gifted with a $25 gas card, I said, you know what? I think I can do this for myself. And here I am.
Shame on them for giving you $25 gas card for saving them 25 million bucks. Eh? What this is 2025, so we're living differently. One quick thing for our audience: a lot of you are coming in with the same name, so maybe you want to check that, because I think there's a little glitch with Zoom here that's telling us that you're all the same name, which is kind of unbelievable. So please go in there and change it, and make sure you introduce yourself. So let's start with the basic. Um, what is this? What is this duty and trade that we've always heard people talk about? We might just, don't pay attention to it, but talk a little bit about uh, what are duties and what are trade, and then how are these tariffs, if you may, how are these things determined? Give us some of those foundation.
Sure, I'll do that. So I think that people started paying attention to the supply chain overall during the pandemic, when they couldn't find tissue and paper towel and your basic essentials in your house. And people never really realized that international trade is still part of supply chain, because it is the regulations and policy that people have to adhere to move their goods and services around the world. So let me break down how duties and tariffs are even assessed. So everyone take a moment and look around you and look at all the things around you. For me, I'm in my office. I have a mouse, I have a pen, I have a book, I have a stapler, I have my laptop. I'm willing to bet bucks that the majority of the things that I've just shown you were imported into the United States. In order for anything to be imported, it has to first have what's called a classification, which is an HTS, a harmonized tariff classification. This is a coding system. And I know that that can sound boring, but when you can master that, you can master your revenue and your profit margins. So these goods are imported and they get this code. This code now determines whether or not it is dutiable, meaning that it's duty free, or duty is assessed to that product, or if it actually qualifies for some type of trade agreement or trade program. So all the things you're seeing in the news right now relation to tariffs, it can be scary, especially for a small business that is still trying to monitor their duties and tariffs and their bottom line. And it's a great question because people just don't even understand how to determine duty. Everybody thinks the new tariffs means that the consumer goods are going to go up. And yes, that has some truth, but that is very a minuscule point of what's happening with new tariffs.
And so how does that thank you. So how does that really affect some of the things that we should be thinking about as a global business? I think we're all here because we're interested in global opportunities, and that means if you're in South Africa or you're in Mauritius or you're in Brazil, a trade is from there to wherever you're headed, right?
Right.
How does this really help as we think through ways or best practices that people should consider in minimizing any semblance of risk that are associated with those activities?
So first, depending on what your commodity is or the service that you want to trade, keep in mind that the duty is assessed based on the value of the good. So Ricardo has on this nice shirt. He's ready for happy hour, right? Let's say that that shirt was valued at $50 and a whole 20-foot container of these shirts come in, and the container is valued now at $100,000. And the duty of this shirt is 10%. The importer is now responsible for paying 10% of that $100,000 on that full container. To be able to mitigate your risk, there's so many different ways. One, I want to be clear that importing is just like your driver's license. It is not your right, it is your privilege. It can be taken from you at any time by Customs and Homeland Security. So in order to reduce your risk or mitigate your risk, you first have to make sure that you're in compliance. So if I told Ricardo, that's a nice shirt, it's 100% cotton. If you add 2% silk, you can reduce the cost. So mitigating your risk is one, knowing your product, everything about your product, inside out, the material, where is it sourced, where did the buttons come from, where was it manufactured, how was it assembled. Also understanding documentation, because customs documentation will require whether or not you can even enter into this commerce. You'll be surprised how many containers are returned to origin just because the documentation is incorrect. So when we think about being in compliance and ensuring that you can reduce your risk, I would say the foundation for that is knowing your product inside out like no other, and then understanding the documentation to ensure your goods can clear customs without delay.
Yeah, that's a valid point. And so how is this different sort of based on where you are? Because we know that maybe location has something to do with it. So if you're on the continent of South America, for example, or you're on the continent of Africa or Europe, can you speak about those geographical differences? Does it actually matter?
Yes, it certainly matters. And some of the challenges I see from some of my clients is they might be in the Caribbean and Jamaica, and they know someone in Nigeria, and they're trying to use the same strategy as a Nigerian-based business to now strategize for the Caribbean-based business. And that does not even make sense at all. And let me give you an example so you can actually see that by region. So currently, Africa has what's called AGOA, which is the African Growth Opportunity Act. And every country within the continent does not qualify. But this trade agreement allows you to enter the US commerce duty free if you qualify. Now you go to Nigeria, they have what's called special indicators, and they have to have this distinct indicator representing they qualify for this special treatment in the US to even come into the US under these guidelines. But then Jamaica has what's called the Caribbean Basin Act, and most of the countries along the Caribbean Basin qualify for a whole different program. So if they use Nigerian strategy, they will be rejected because, of course, their shipping documents is not going to match the same as the routing of Nigeria, and neither is the origin of those goods. So by region matters because the United States has 14 trade agreements with other countries, and people think that means 14 countries, but it doesn't. Alone is 32 countries under AGOA. It can be by continent as well. So the first thing people need to consider is, what country am I in? Think about that. What country am I exporting from? And then where is the originating content of your material? Where does your goods actually originate?
Fantastic. I'm interested in learning more about sort of any sort of pressing issues that's currently impacting people who want to do business globally, who are already doing that. What are some of these issues that are facing us right now as it relates to international trade?
So this is going to be the most important question we'll likely discuss today. So people that are in global business or interested in global business, this is the time to pull out a pen and a paper and make note of this. Currently, we're seeing additional tariffs be added. People don't know what that means exactly. So if, for instance, for China already had an additional 25% tariff imposed under the original or the first Trump administration. So that means you have to pay the duty that was already assessed plus an additional 25. So now in February, an additional 10% is going to be imposed on China. So 10% is going to go on top of that as well. So keep in mind, that's 3 tiers. So you have to pay the first duty, the second duty, and then the next duty. When you're doing what I call a white paper exercise, which is determining your margins, your profit margins, it's crucial for global businesses to have a section distinct to trade and supply chain. Because if you were making a profit of $50 per shirt that you're importing, and now you have all these additional duties, your business can potentially go out of business. A great example is Apple. When the original Trump administration, I'm saying original meaning first, imposed the additional 25% tariffs on China, the first thing that Apple did was take the majority of their production and manufacturing to India. And they also went and lobbied on Capitol Hill. So sometimes you got to fight with one hand and you got to build with the other at the same time. So what's crucial for global businesses is to have your profit margins, understand how to strategize against the tariffs. And what's important is knowing this. This is the main thing I want you all to get today. If you are doing business globally, and you are freaking out right now because you're thinking there's no way my business can continue to import and source from China. We're going to go out of business with all these different tariffs. Please hear me loud and clear. This is not the end all be all for you. There are so many programs that allow you to get 99% of your duty back, to mitigate your duties, to reduce your duties. Ricardo, if you didn't have to pay taxes this year on any of your businesses, and we know Ricardo is a great businessman, because I'm not going to say you're getting a refund. If you didn't have to pay any of your taxes this year, and I tell you that you don't have to pay them for 5 years, what would you do with that money?
I'll invest that money for sure.
Right, because you're going to find a way to capitalize on that. That's the same strategy for us as global business owners, to be able to mitigate, reduce, and defer those duties.
Fantastic. This is great. If you're loving this conversation, let us know in the chat. I mean, if you've got a question for Shaq, please put them in the chat. We'll get to them shortly. For those of you who have joined us a little later, welcome. This is the Power Hour, GOC Power Hour. We've got a couple of things that we're putting in the chat right now. Make sure you go to our LinkedIn, follow us on social media. we could use some love there because that tells us that you like what it is that you're doing. And, you know, we know that you all don't like to talk a lot. So your actions usually show. So go to LinkedIn, go to Instagram. We're putting these things also on YouTube. So people ask us, well, how do I get the recording? This is an open invitation to the general public to understand what we're doing in global opportunities. And this is your opportunity to show some love. So please go ahead and follow us over there. You can follow the Global Opportunities Committee. You can follow the Atlanta Black Chamber. That gives you an opportunity to stay put. Shaq, I'm going to come back right to you, but we do have a member that we want to spotlight. And she is all the way in Europe, actually. She's out in Germany. And if Michelle is ready, and Michelle, you can hear us. Michelle, why don't you come off mute? It is exciting to actually have someone from Germany on the call too. And I didn't make that up, but we're actually going to Germany in a couple of weeks, so that might be sort of a good coincidence. So Michelle, let us know who you are and what you do, and of course, you are a regional lead for Germany. You've been really helping us to understand that business landscape. So why don't you take 60 seconds and talk about who you are and what your business is?
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you, Ricardo, for the opportunity. I'm Michelle, and my company is I'm CEO from Go Ahead Business. And Go Ahead Business is a consult and training company for sustainability, and we help companies in different issues like marketing to the German market, how to grow a sustainable business, how to understand the sustainable issues in the German market here. And we will build a partnership between companies, German companies, and other delegations. And we do trainings for example, if your company is a normal company or traditional company, you like to get a sustainable way to make business with Europe, my companies can help you to make it. And it's very interesting what Chuck is talking about import and export to do global business. Because, for example, if you don't know Europe, Europe has a lot of new regulation on the sustainability topics. For example, they have regulations like timber regulations, they have rich regulation for chemical stuffs, they have package regulation about if you export to Europe, you need to be what kind of package you need to use to be accepted in European customs. And yeah, all the sustainability focus, like social focus or supply chain traceability and everything. It's not about to think I like to handle global. You need to understand which are the aspects for which country. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. And speaking about these different changes that keeps coming up, we'll go back to you, Shaq, on some of these new tariff changes. Let's talk a little bit about some of these new tariff changes that are impacting the businesses that we're doing globally.
Yes, thank you for that. So I want to focus on anyone here that is in the business of aluminum and steel, because I think that that is crucial right now. Also, Canada and Mexico. We've talked about China. Hopefully, people have gotten what they need in regard to China. So, in regard to Canada and Mexico, during the first Trump administration, within the first 90 or 120 days, that administration went immediately and focused on what was known as NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. NAFTA is now USMCA, the US Mexico Canada Agreement. And there was a lot of controversy around that trade agreement because it focused heavily on the auto industry and aluminum and steel. And if you understand what is the most imported goods from those particular regions, you can understand why. There's something called anti-dumping. literally something being dumped into the United States. And let's say the same shirt Ricardo has that I also manufacture that shirt. Ricardo's bringing his in from Jamaica, but I produce mine here in the US, which reduces now exports. If Ricardo can now compete against me, my business can potentially go out of business. So in my opinion, when the slogan "Make America Great Again" started originally, it went left a little bit, but originally it was to bring manufacturing back to the US to increase exports. When exports increase, the economy increases because job increases. So in regard to Canada and Mexico, those particular industries were targeted because the auto industry was taking a big hit from all of the imported goods from foreign nations, and anti-dumping began, where you can report these companies and say, these companies are making my jobs go down, they're decreasing my sales, I'm having to lay off people, and they're jeopardizing American businesses and American jobs. Most people don't know that that's even a thing. And when that happens and a whole industry is in jeopardy of going under, and the auto industry is so prominent for the US, then the administration targeted those products to produce or increase exports and production of aluminum, steel, and auto parts in the US. What ended up happening, though, was people went to Brazil for the sourcing of those goods, and they increased greatly, and Brazil began to thrive as a huge aluminum and steel producer. So currently, people that are interested or have been doing business in Canada and Mexico, your product may not even qualify for the additional tariffs, or they may, even if they do qualify, there still may be ways to get your duty back because it's a cross-border nation. So because Canada and Mexico are the highest trading partners with the US, I think more people are concerned about Canada and Mexico right now because it's easier to get goods in and out. But those are the areas where there's actually more opportunity than others.
Fantastic. And so the maybe we can talk a little bit about sort of an actual sort of a case study that you've maybe you've worked on. Can we talk a little about some maybe a real life case that you've been able to work through all of these processes?
Right. So at Agile Solutions, what makes us very different, especially from the larger consulting firms, is that we work a great deal with businesses that don't have a trade expert internally. So we build out trade strategies. And in this trade strategy, we tell you if it's an opportunity to re-engineer or remanufacture your product. Because you may love the shirt that Ricardo has on, but if I reduce that cotton by 10% and add an additional 10% silk, then he can reduce his duty and still increase his profit margins. And that's just one of the potential ways. So there's so many other ways, but that's an easy way to explain. So we take your product, we do a deep dive into it, and we tell you all the potential ways to reduce, eliminate, or defer your duties, whether it be a customs program, whether it be engineering, whether it be what's called duty drawback, and so many other ways to reconcile your goods. So once we understand the ways to reduce your profit margins, then we go into telling you what trade agreements you qualify for, how to qualify. We do all of your customs documents, and we even clear your goods through customs for you as well. So we consider ourselves to be an end-to-end supply chain solution. Currently, I have a client that was referred to me by someone, and I think on our trade mission to South Africa. Ricardo led a trade mission to South Africa last year. And she kept telling me that she spent so much money on her actual product that she does not have the money to now work with a trade expert. And I was telling her that that's no different than deciding not to work with a tax expert to file your taxes. It's that crucial. She imported hoodies to the United States, and by the time she contacted me, she was in so much trouble. It was very little time to help, right? So there's success stories, but there's also some stories that get to success at some point. In this particular issue, this product qualified for a GOA 100%, and that means that a container of hoodies, a 40-foot container of hoodies, would have been duty free. But because she called it a hoodie and customs has no definition of a hoodie, these goods were in jeopardy of being returned all the way back to Cape Town. because she doesn't even understand that what she calls something as a consumer is not what customs definition is of a product. Therefore, all of her documentation was incorrect. By the time I got the call, it was too late. You only had 5 days to clear the goods through customs without them being returned to origin or destroyed or auctioned. Your goods can even be auctioned in the US. So her goods were returned to origin. She doesn't know what she's going to do at this point because she put everything she had in profit from other domestic moves into this, and she doesn't know how she's going to regroup again. So that's a story that's really unfortunate, but we've had great success from larger importers. But during my time of working with Lockheed Martin before I started Agate Solutions, I was able to recover $30 million in duty within the first year or two of the first trade war under the Trump administration. Right now, the clients that I'm working with, I'm teaching them how to dual source their goods to reduce their duty and mitigate their duty. We have a great success story currently for a chemical company that was not allowed to get their goods into the US because they didn't understand EPA regulations. And they're really concerned about all these new tariffs. So this is going to be a great success story because what we have done is shown them how to re-engineer hazardous chemicals to still get the same quality of the product that they want, but still reduce their duty. So now we have given them a strategy to reduce their duty. So they were originally going to be paying 11% on these chemicals, and now they're only going to be subject to 3%. We're also working with a footwear company in Cape Town where they don't understand what's called foxing inside of your shoe. And I'm going to show you quickly because I think this is important for anyone that's in the footwear. So here I am. This is a bedroom slipper. People don't know that there's something in your shoe that's called foxing. That's why shoes are so expensive. From here to here on your side of your shoe, if I rip this open right now, you're going to have a piece of rubber or plastic or some type of threading in this piece here, and it's called foxing. I can tell you how to minimize your foxing or re-engineer your shoe with the foxing to take your duty from 13% to 9% and even potentially 3% if you are in the sporting goods arena. So let's not be scared of duties. Bring on the duties, bring on the tariffs because we have a solution.
That's fantastic. I love that actually, and that's the actual case that I think people want to hear more. I saw someone put in the chat. I think it's Toria that talks about her magazine. She wants to get some help bringing her magazine into Ghana or other items. That's also like a specific case, right? And maybe she could take that up with you a little later. But is there anything that you can speak to this whole bilateral thing? Because we want people to understand that this is really not about everything coming into the US, right? This is also about if you're an American company and you're shipping to these other destinations as well, what sort of help do you provide? Because I think it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're bringing stuff here or you're sending stuff out there. But to this specific case, do you actually handle these kinds of stuff, magazines and so forth and so on, going into spaces like Ghana?
Yes, so we do every commodity, every country. I've been very blessed to work in pretty much every commodity in every country throughout my career, so I'm not limited to a region. But bilateral trade is crucial for this conversation because the whole point of these additional tariffs is to increase production in the US and manufacturing to increase our exports. So if you are on the export side and wanting to send your goods to other countries, you're in a prime season and you should be ready to go. Like this is your season right now because the government is focusing on programs to increase exports. So I've been the lead instructor for the Department of Commerce and International Trade Administration as an instructor for exports out. And these exports are amazing opportunities because the same people you're going to export to are likely going to want your help also to import. So you're now going to find yourself in a position to do bilateral trade with a company that you probably only was thinking to do one particular thing with. Export regulations also go through customs as well. They also are dutiable and they also have the same classification. The difference that you should take into consideration, ma'am, is that Every time something is imported, it's classified by what's called the harmonized tariff schedule. If it is exported, it is classified by what's called a Schedule B, and they're not always interchangeable. My contact information will be put in the chat, so I look forward to talking to you more. Congratulations on your success.
Fantastic. Before we talk about, we've got an opportunity to spotlight. I haven't forgotten about that, but before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about options that we have as global business to increase our profit margins during a time like this, because there are lots of changes, there are lots of things that are actually happening. Can you speak a little bit about how do we think through that and increase those profit margins of ours?
Yeah, if you're doing business globally, there in my expertise, there's 5 ways, and I'm going to break this. It's because we're short on time here. I'm going to also do a deep dive into this on Monday, and Samuel will put the link inside of the chat if you really want to like go into specific commodities. So there is duty deferral programs that you can defer your duty for potentially for 5 years. That would increase your profit margins because again, you have more working capital to buy more product, to do whatever you need to do for your company to make more money. That's one way. You have tariff engineering, which we've talked about on how to change the tariff by re-engineering or manufacturing your product. There are also programs through warehousing to put your goods in foreign trade zones instead of domestic warehousing. Right now, you will be surprised how many people just allow the basic carrier like UPS, DHL, FedEx, and the like thereof to just, they take their hands off. They say, hey, you handle it. Not realizing that they are a mere logistics provider, not the person that is going to ensure your strategy increases your profit margin for you. So when that happens, you put your goods into any old warehouse that they put it in instead of strategically making sure it goes into what's called a foreign trade zone, an FTZ. There are reconciliation programs where you can pay duty on the original sale of your good instead of the sale that you have. So for instance, again, Ricardo's shirt. Ricardo is buying his shirt from this guy named ABC, but guess what? ABC is really getting the shirt from GOC. So what Ricardo wants is to pay the duty on the original sale. He doesn't want to pay the duty on the sale he's getting because the value is more. So we help you do that as well. And then the last thing I'll mention is what's called duty drawback. Some products, depending on the country and the type of product, is potentially eligible to qualify for what's called duty drawback, which will allow you to recover 99% of your duty. When I say recover, I mean a fat check from the Department of Treasury. And that's the most I can give you in such a short time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is great. I think this is good information for us to get thinking and get started. You have a course coming up, you said, and we'll talk a little bit about that course a little later. But I want to switch gear and I want to talk about an opportunity because every week we do want to spotlight opportunities. And so to give you some context of like what does that actually mean and how would you do that when you're a member of GOC and obviously by extension a member of ABC. Now, don't forget, you have to be a part of ABC to be a part of GOC. So you can look at some of the links that Sam is sharing in the chat. There is this opportunity that we're going to talk about real quick for you. And if any of you are interested in that, you need to connect with us because I think this is also the way that you grow your business. So here it goes. I'm not going to call any name or I'm not going to give any of that away. I'll just tell you what the opportunity is so that if you're interested, you can reach out. This particular company is doing about $5 million in revenue annually. And they probably have close to 100 people that they employ right now. And they are in the energy space. So they're actually looking for, and this might work better for you if you're in the US, right? But they're actually looking for some suppliers or distributors. And what kind of supplier, what kind of distributor we're looking for here. They're in the energy business. So any water or wastewater treatment provider that could actually help them to solve those challenges that they have. They provide these kinds of services and these kinds of products to their clients. So they're looking to purchase those. So this is, again, talking about the power of trade. And if you are here in the US, This company is actually asking us to look for you and connect you to this opportunity. Again, there's a real chance for growth here. Also, if you are in the lighting manufacturing business, so light, you provide light. So one of the things that the company does is provide street lighting and install these solar lightings and solar equipment. If you are in that business, or if anyone you know within the network that is in this business, you need to start reaching out to us so that we can connect you. Any light, any instrumentation, so you will understand what instrumentation is if you're in that business. Or essentially any sort of automation equipment manufacturer, they're looking for those kinds of stuff. So that's an example of an opportunity, and this is a real opportunity. Like I'm literally looking at it here that was submitted by a major company who's saying, look, if you've got anyone who is in this business and would like to talk business, we certainly would love to chat with them and potentially set meetings up with them. Which brings me to the next thing, because coming up at the end of every month, we're doing these virtual B2B matchmaking. And to show you how powerful these things are, it only takes one meeting, right, for you to talk about what is it that you're looking for, or who you're looking for, what do you actually have, to change the trajectory of your business, or to set you on a growth path. So we do want you to think about the opportunity that we're providing. This is a platform for you to be able to do these B2B matchmaking. So get ready for that one, because that one is going to come up at the end of this month. I believe it's on the 27th, where we will be matching you, allowing you to connect with other folks who are interested in doing some semblance of business. And again, the way we look at it is these are folks who are trading, commodities or services. And then you also have folks who are looking to invest, and folks who are probably looking for an investor. And then you've got people who are interested in partnerships. If you've got the capacity to partner, or if you yourself looking for a partner, we want you to be a part of these B2B, because they change lives, and they're real examples of how your business can actually grow. So let's get back to the conversation, Chuck. And if you've got questions, we're going to start taking those questions now. Maybe if you want to raise your hand to ask your question, you can start doing that now as we get on the final stretch here. So I want to talk about the global businesses and doing due diligence, right? So this is a time where we've got to ensure customs compliance. We've got to ensure that we're on the right side of things. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how can we ensure that the due diligence that we need to do is done the right way.
So first, I'm going to say that due diligence comes with any regulatory matters, even your basic taxes in the US with IRS or wherever you live. And no one would try to really take that on themselves and become an expert in that overnight. So I think that having education and having someone that can be your advisor, even if you just need to ask a few questions, because doing it, what I call willy-nilly or just winging it, can really be the detriment to your business. The last thing you want to do is lose your right to import or lose your right to export, and you can't come back from that. We also do what's called compliance manuals for companies, where we take all your products, what countries you're going to, and we build you a whole manual and SOPs, standard operating procedures, that you can give to customs if you were ever audited. You can, produce within new hires to be your training guide. But your due diligence for what we call a 360 compliance program is that you can show customs that you have someone that you can call, whether it be in-house or external, to mitigate or support your customs compliance needs. Otherwise, you can be in jeopardy of fines, seizures, penalties, or worst case scenario, losing your license. I want to mention this as well while we're on this topic, that Ricardo does a great job, not just him, because we really have a good team here of people, especially leaders, that support the B2B meetings and the trade initiatives that he puts forth, especially with the travel. And what I see when I've been on maybe 6 trade missions last year, and not just with Ricardo's, but in general, even government ones, I'm always concerned that people get so excited about the buyer-seller agreement and the purchase order. They make commitments, they want to sign the agreement, and then they go back to the drawing board to actually execute against these agreements. And then they find out that either regulatory matters or government policy or compliance for customs state that they have to do certain things or be eligible or meet certain guidelines. And just like that, they can't execute on a promise that they've already contractually put themselves in. So if you go to these B2B meetings, I would strongly encourage you, find your buyer, find your seller, find your source, find your connection, your business connection, find your thing. But before you go into executing on what you can import or export, you should be talking to someone that can tell you what you are allowed to do and how to really scale and pivot in those connections.
Fantastic. And before we take Mercy, I see Mercy's hand is up. So Mercy, please get ready to unmute and ask your question. But before we do that, I wanna talk about resources. So you know, I'm sure you've got some places and some things that folks can begin to continue their learning. The hour shall come, and we're on the home stretch, but the power continues, and this is how you grow. This is how you learn. Exposing yourself to things that you've never exposed yourself to before stretches you into new territory and new dimension. And I always say, as an advisor, what you know has gotten you here. It's all that is. Everything that you know up to this point has got you here. But if you are going to go there, you need to know some other things. And so that's really one of the things that holds our folks back. So this is an opportunity for you to use these resources to then learn more about what you need to know so you can get there, because you are capped out with all the learnings, all the things you currently have has gotten you this far. But to go further, you need to know more. And so, Shaq, talk a little bit about some of these resources. I think you might have some stuff that you might want to throw in the chat. So what are some of these top resources that you need folks to really pay attention to and to learn more about what's going on here?
So first, I want to tell people that if you're doing business globally, you should have a dictionary of international trade. Because people are trying to have dialogue about global business and they don't even have the proper terminology to understand what they're committing themselves to. The Dictionary of International Trade is something you can buy the book. I always keep a book myself, but I offer a downloadable free version too. So there's free versions that are PDF that you can download, but it's a huge, huge, huge file. Again, that's called the Dictionary. Kelvin, can you put this in the chat for me? It's called the Dictionary of International Trade. That's one thing. The second thing everyone needs to have is what's called INCO terms. Kelvin put that there too, is INCO, INCO terms. And that book is literally about this thick. It has I think 11 terms that you must have in your buyer-seller agreements in order to conduct business internationally. And those terms determine who is liable if anything happens. So if a ship blows up on the water, if it gets stuck in the Panama Canal, the things that you think is unrealistic, but they happen. If there's an act of God, if anything happens, who is responsible for every single leg of the transaction? Who's liable at the port? Who's liable at the warehouse? Who's liable during production? Who's liable when it gets to the US? So Incoterms is another one. I've put Samuel has been great. Thank you, Samuel. My contact information is there. If you email us, we can have all types of ebooks and guides where it literally has end to end what you need to know before you start global business from a trade and supply chain perspective.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I know we saw a hand up earlier. If you've got any questions for Shaq, it's now time for the Q&A piece. Raise your hand, and let's pose your question to Shaq real quick. So anyone who's got a question, I know Mercy her hand is up. I don't see her on the call anymore, but any questions for Shaq that you'd like to pose now? So we'll give you a second to put that up. Tina, okay, Tina, I see Tina, you've got a question. Tina, welcome. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so hopefully this is not a a stupid question, I guess, or a dumb question, but in regards to digital products, or digital services, since we're, providing educational services, online, is there anything that I should be aware of when I'm doing
That's
that
a
on a
great
global
question.
scale?
That's a great question. Thank you, Tina. So, that if you've been following the news, you might recall recently where the UPS, or what is it, the United States Parcel Service, your regular post office, decided they were no longer delivering any Chinese product because they didn't want to be responsible for collecting that additional duty because it can get complicated. And some people were actually being impacted by that by e-commerce and digital products. I want to encourage, I don't know if you're saying for import or export, but for export, that's crucial because depending on what you're exchanging, is if it's intellectual property or other type of what we consider tech trade, that is also something that is subject to trade criteria and potentially dutiable. And people think because they're just emailing or they're downloading from a website or they're buying from a website that nobody will find that. It's to you, it's not to your benefit to do business that way because there's something called CTPAT. It was enacted after 9/11 to protect our borders, but it has expanded so broadly to include cybersecurity and tech that now those particular areas break down where you could be fined, penalized, or your business will be in jeopardy. And keep in mind that once you are caught, this is public information. So now your competitors will see your product, your reputation will be out there, your non-compliance. So just be careful. So it depends on what your product is, Tina, but we can talk about that offline too.
That's a great question. I think that's a great point. A lot of us are in the professional services business and still trying to figure out how do we package the services that we offer in a digital format to export it, right? And this certainly is deserving of another session, right? I really love this because
It is.
specifically focusing on digital. So folks, be on the lookout for probably a part two, but really then like really touching on this topic of digital services and how you actually get that into other territories. I see someone else hand is up, James. I know that's probably not your name, but maybe if you can come off mute, tell us who you are and then ask your question, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You might want to
Yes.
change your name, but introduce yourself. What's your name?
Okay, I'm Dr. Queen Oba. Dr. Queen Oba. I'm calling
Hi,
you from
Dr.
Nigeria.
Queen. Welcome.
Yes,
Feel free to
thank
ask
you.
your question.
Okay, in Nigeria here, we own an export terminal. So we
Yeah.
do a whole lot of containers to the US. So recently they returned a 40-foot container back to us. And we've been asking questions and all that. So our company would like to partner with you so that you become our trade expert. So I don't know how to get across to you and then how we can work together. And then this AGOA, it's going to expire by 2025. So I don't know the plans, if there are plans already in place for the renewal of the Trade Act or something. So I would like to know, please, because we in Nigeria were very, very much interested in that renewal of that act, please.
Thank you, Dr. Queen, for your question. So I was just in Nigeria in late October where I held a 2-day workshop where it was so hard to even put all of this in 2 full days. Where we broke down end-to-end supply chain strategies for all the commodities, customs, documentation, and literally you left with a packet of everything you needed to do to come into the US. The room only allowed 50 people each day, and we had over 500 people registered in 24 hours, and we had to cut off the registration early. So that's unfortunate. But to answer your question in regard to AGOA is due to expire in September of 2025. Many people are interested in what's going to happen with AGOA, including myself, because South Africa is the largest user of AGOA. However, Nigeria has been the largest user in regard to oil and gas. And there's so many opportunities under AGOA. So whether you have AGOA or not, I would encourage you to work with me or whatever trade expert you choose to still have a strategy, because whether you have AGOA or not, there are still opportunities for preferential or what's called duty-free treatment. And I will have to understand your product more to help you better understand that. And I know we're closing soon, so I want to mention this before we take the next question. And Mercy got her hand back, him or her hand back. I just want to mention that those 5 programs that I mentioned to you that allow you to reduce, defer, or increase your profit margins, that is going to be done in a 4-week, and I don't even teach that many live courses ever. I'm going to teach that course live myself, not my consultant, where I am going to teach you step by step each 5 opportunity to increase your profit margins using trade strategies. I just don't want people to feel helpless, especially the small and medium-sized businesses that don't have the expertise to get them through this rough time. So in the webinar we're having on Monday, we will give, that's not even open yet because we're only going to be able to take a small amount of people. So we're going to open that on Monday. When you come to the webinar I'm having on Monday, we will open up that registration to you then. Thank you, Ricardo. And then I think we have 2 more
Awesome,
people.
awesome, fantastic. So this is great, guys. I love when we're experiencing these real-time opportunities to connect, right? Who would have thought? Now we're connecting Nigeria to Agate, and let's go, man. Let's get the business done, right? So, Toria, you've got a question. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much. And Shaq, thank you for this information. I mean, honestly, it's opened up my eyes in more ways than I could have even thought, because I'm in the book publishing space and I also publish an annual magazine. However, that's where I was talking about where I had shipped the magazine from China to Ghana. And so I use Alibaba. But one of the bigger challenges that I find, Shaq, is that the price of the printing is great. It's when they then start adding on all this shipping. And so would your webinar also help us with that? Because the shipping is outrageous. And then I never got the magazines in Ghana. So I'm looking very forward to assisting with that, because we're trying to do a lot of donations and all types of stuff. But also, like, for those of us who utilize those third-party services like Alibaba, is that something that we also need to be looking into as far as protecting ourselves and or ways to cut our costs there too?
That's a great question. I could almost hug you because that's so realistic in day-to-day business right now. So, yes, this course will help you with that. I think that many business owners take their goods to these large carriers and they just dump it there and walk away. They don't realize that there are freight forwarders and what's called NVOCCs that specialize in your particular product. And you're not just like an EIN number or a tracking number. They actually know you, they know your business, they deep dive, and we partner with them to ensure that our clients don't find themselves caught in this like mass production and shipping of supply chain. And instead, their product is known by someone and you have an account manager to actually walk you through these processes. So you sound like you need to trade strategy so that you can mitigate some of these duties. I also sit on a great deal of other boards that I won't go through today, but I sit on a board that has a chapter and a president in Ghana that leads women in international trade that might be good for you. So let's talk more. Publishing is actually very unique. If you look up, if you go to something called Cross, CROSS, it's a customs website. And in the search bar, put in published material, and then let's talk about it in my webinar next week, because you need to know how to retain that information and how to translate it, and I'll help you do that.
Fantastic,
Thank you so
fantastic.
much.
Well, thank you. One more question, Mercy. Please go ahead and unmute, ask your question. All right, Mercy, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to find out if it is possible to bring our product as samples during the February conference. And then what are the times that are available for just samples to be brought to the US?
Okay, I think that's a question, Mercy, that we'll have to address offline because we've got a small delegation. I think that's what she's referring to. We do not have a conference in February, so let's make sure we get that straight. It's a small delegation that we have that's participating in the Atlanta Black Expo that's happening
Okay.
here in Atlanta. But we may have to address that offline. Your contact person, your POC that's talking to you, please address those. This is specifically questions for Shaq around trade tariff. Great question though, but we'll have to address it in another channel. Okay. All right. So we're
Okay,
wrapping
thank
up here. We're wrapping up here. And Shaq, your advice, your final advice to people who are interested in going global, who have already started doing that process, and who just simply want to grow during this period.
So I would like to leave you with this final thought. There are levels to everything. No matter what it is, there's levels to everything. There's always going to be a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced person in global business. If you are in your beginning stages of global business, this is the opportune time to be educated and connected. So being at ABC, GOC specifically, gives you that leverage to now start interacting and meeting people and networking in that space. We offer end-to-end courses, and these courses that I offer, we're not just a random course. We are an accredited education academy where you get a micro accreditation, which is a global trade specialist, and you're certified. And some of these courses are like only $100, so they're very inexpensive, and they're meant to be that way, so that you can re-record, self-pace yourself through this. That's one. For people that are in the intermediate stage, that means that you're actually making profit, even if it's small, you're actually doing the business globally. For you, this is the time to team up with someone that can help you now optimize, because you cannot pivot and you cannot scale with just producing more product. That's not going to be enough. If you're competing, especially with the bigger businesses in the world, they have trade experts that sit next to them. They're on their executive team. And then people that are in the advanced stage, I would say that if you're in the advanced stage of doing business globally and you're seeing 6-figure numbers, 7-figure numbers, the don't what I see people who happen there, they get so high they can't see low. And I have clients like that myself. They can't see low until their CPA or CFO tells them, whoa, 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 we're going to lay people off. And it hits them so rapidly that they're not prepared. So for the people that are in the advanced stages of global business, I will tell you, do not get so far removed from your operations that you are not having strategies to increase your profit margins to have a competitive edge. You need to be dual sourcing. You should not be sourcing one product, one person, one country, because the moment that blows up, your business blows up with it.
Wonderful. This is so exciting. Thank you so much. Guys, we would love to have your feedback. We just posted a feedback link in the chat. Please take a moment and tell us what you think. This is your way and our way of appreciating how you value this kind of information so that we can continue to provide you with it and improve the quality of that provision. Next week on the Power Hour, we are actually going to touch in Angola. Angola is one of those cherished countries on the continent we've been hearing a lot about, and we're going to be meeting folks from Angola. If you are interested in that territory, please make sure that you sign up for the Power Hour next week. And so right now we're over time, but as we always say, the hour has come, but the power continues. You can look for this recording later on YouTube. Connect with us, subscribe to our channels, become a member if you are not in our circle. This is a great way to grow and to build as well. So thank you, everyone. Shaq, thank you for doing this. This was really helpful. I hope everyone got some things to take away from it. Tell us what your thoughts are on LinkedIn. Reach out to us if you need any help. But have a great afternoon, everybody, and a great morning to those of you as well. Thank you for coming. Talk to you guys soon. See you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Awesome, Shaq. Thank you, team.
Thank
Awesome,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
I love it here.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Shaq.
Awesome. That sounds like a commercial right there. I love it
It
here.
does sound like a
Thank
commercial.
you, darling.
Oh,
Thank you,
we have
darling.
a baby. We have a baby in the house.
Junior Kevin.
Junior
Still be
Kelvin.
called Kevin Junior.